My name is Manny Hernandez. Today, we're going to be discussing the effects of prompting procedures on point of sale accuracy in a school cafe for a student with autism spectrum disorder. The rationale for this study is that independent and accurate point of sale responding is a critical work readiness skill for transition age students and supports employability. Our participant is a student by the pseudonym of Max. He is 19 years old, has autism spectrum disorder. He currently attends a post high school transition program that serves young adults from the age of 18 to 22. This is a program that is a part of the school district that Max currently attends for adults with special needs, and the funding source is the unified school district in his area. Max works as a cashier at a student-run cafe, where he uses a Square application on his iPad to ring customers up during their purchases. The rationale for this study is that independent and accurate point of sale responding is a critical work readiness skill for transition age students and supports future employability. The research question is, will prompting procedures such as verbal, gestural, or modeling increase Max's independent item selection accuracy on the Square register during his shifts at the cafe? The skills and social validity include that independent and accurate item selection on the register reduces staff prompting, shortens the checkout time for customers, and aligns with the vocational goals that the where the pro so the vocational goals at Max's current school setting. Previous research does show that prompting-based instruction with mobile devices supports skill acquisition for individuals with developmental disabilities. And the reason we chose this ABAB withdrawal design is that ABAB withdrawal provides repeated demonstration of effect for reversible behaviors. The research methods employed during the study were single case ABAB withdrawal with an A1 baseline, a B1 intervention phase, A2 withdrawal probe, and a B2 return to intervention phase. The independent variable was the availability of fixed least to most prompting. For Max, the prompts started from least to most in a sequence of verbal, gestural, and then modeling, only delivered after 3 seconds had elapsed between the discriminative stimulus which constituted an incorrect response. So, for example, if a patron walked in and placed a soda can on the desk, Max then had 3 seconds to select the correct item uh, for this trial to be considered an independent trial. Thereafter, Max would be prompted during the intervention phases. There were no prompts for Max during the baseline phases. The dependent variable was the percent of independent item selection accuracy per session. A plus on the data sheet indicated a correct icon that was selected on the Square application. A minus on the data sheet indicated an incorrect response. An incorrect response would constitute a longer than 3 second delay between the SD, which would be the customer placing an item on the table, and Max's selection of said item on the Square application. The data collection method was that one customer purchase would equal one trial. Sessions ran up to 30 minutes or until 10 trials were collected. Initially, we were going to do 45-minute sessions with an unlimited amount of trials, but because this was a novel experience for Max, we didn't want him to fatigue. So we only ran sessions for 30 minutes or up until 10 trials had been collected per session. The baseline procedures were that the discriminative stimulus was the customer walking up to the register to purchase an item. We would wait for 3 seconds for an independent response from Max. If Max responded independently, he would receive praise and a plus on the paper data. An incorrect response from Max would not elicit any feedback, nor would there be any corrective prompting. So during the baseline phase, if Max failed to correctly select an item, then the observers would take the Square app and finish the transaction and not model the correct item selection for Max during the baseline. The intervention procedures were that the discriminative stimulus remained the same. If a customer came up to the table, placed an item on the table, Max had 3 seconds to make a selection. If he did not make an independent selection, then prompts were delivered. The sequence of prompt delivery would be verbal, giving Max a verbal cue to select an item. Gestural would be pointing at the item on the Square app, and modeling would be picking up the item at the iPad and physically showing Max the item. The difference here with the observer picking up the iPad is that they would actually show Max where the item was during the intervention procedures, whereas in the baseline procedures, there was no modeling for Max. If Max made a correct selection in subsequent trials, then he was given feedback. He was given praise after making a correct response. During the trials where he did need prompts, neutral feedback was paired with the prompt that was given to Max. The steps and procedures per trial would be that there would be a discriminative stimulus, the customer walking up with items to purchase. Max had a 3-second opportunity to make a selection on the Square app. Thereafter, a score would be placed on the data sheet, as well as praise for independent item selections from Max. Otherwise, we would deliver prompts based on least to most hierarchy and give neutral feedback. For our results, we see here that during the initial baseline phase, or A1, the range of scores was from about 30 to 30% back down to 20. This was a relatively novel experience for Max. He didn't have any vocational training prior to the student store job other than as a customer. So this allowed us to collect what we believe to be a relatively accurate representation of his baseline, even though we only had 3 session days and 10 trials per session. For the intervention phase, or B1, we see an immediate effect when the interventions of prompting are introduced. There is a range from about 50% to 80% in independent item selection accuracy. During the withdrawal phase or withdrawal probe in A2, we see an immediate drop back to a range of about 30 to 20%. We did expect some maturation effects between the B phase and the A2 phase. And so visibly he did seem to regress to the highest point compared to A1 and A2, which was about 30% accuracy. But as the sessions continued, he dropped to about a 20% accuracy in the subsequent sessions. During the final reintroduction phase in B2, we see an immediate spike back up to a range of 80 to 90% within the sessions for B2. And it is important to note that during the phases of a baseline compared to the intervention phases, there is no overlap in the range of data. So some of the observations for our results are that visual analysis indicates that the intervention produced a functional relationship with Max's independent item selection accuracy. Low baseline accuracy was observed during the first baseline phase. Accuracy immediately increased during the B1 prompt introduction. There was a return to low accuracy when the prompts were withdrawn at A2. Item selection accuracy rebounded when the prompts were available again at B2. And in B2, prompts were only needed early in the sessions, and thereafter, Max's independent item selection predominated after. So to say that initially during the B2 phase, he did require, let's say for this 80%, he did require 2 prompts early on in the session, but for the remainder of the session, for the data collected here, Max was able to independently identify the items, the PECs on the Square app. Same with the 90% here, he only required 1 prompt per session. So we do see an immediacy of the effects. And so to summarize and interpret this, the ABAB withdrawal pattern supports a functional relation between the availability of prompting and independent register accuracy. Changes in levels were immediate, and distributions showed minimal, actually no overlap across any of the phases within baseline and also within the intervention phases. The implications here are that a concise least to most prompting script implemented at the register can quickly improve the accuracy for transition age students with autism spectrum disorder in mock work settings within academia. So essentially creating a space where students can role play work vocational skills in academia does seem to work for our learners. Some of the limitations here would be that there is a limited generalization beyond the school cafe. So that is a big limitation that we did observe, or we did hypothesize that because Max was only working on the Square app, let's say if he were to get an opportunity to work at a grocery store, those vocational skills acquired using the Square app may not transfer to other POS systems, or let's say like more archaic POS systems like green screen. The skill sets needed to that would not necessarily generalize to different POS systems, even if Max did master the Square app at his campus. An additional limitation was that we didn't have an inter-observer agreement for formal procedural fidelity. Initially, we had mocked up a inter-observer agreement between myself and another observer that also worked at Max's campus. But after about a session or two, we realized that running an inter-observer agreement trial by trial was going to be difficult given the amount of foot traffic that was occurring during Max's shifts at the Café, as well as the fact that this was a novel experience for Max, and sometimes he would need redirection. So, or response blocking. For example, occasionally he would elope from the register and we would have to stop the 30-minute timer that we had allotted for him and redirect him back to the register. Some of the future changes and refinements would be to add a trial by trial inter-observer agreement for at least 25% of the sessions, perhaps in a future setting with a different student, because with Max, it could be that this has already, because of the effects of maturation and possible mastery in the future, running this study again with Max may not be possible, but perhaps with other students at his campus, and trying again to do an inter-observer agreement. And also for future changes and refinements within the context of Max's single case study would be to include maintenance and generalization probes to other menus, and also ways for this to generalize to other POS systems. So if we were able to acquire licensing for other POS systems at his campus, or even virtual games for Max to use in lieu of the Square app, so that the skill set can generalize for him. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.